After seeing how some high elo players have been building their early game Revenants, this has led me to investigate Ability Pen a little bit more. Why are these high elo players doing this, and am I missing something? Is there something I'm just completely off my rocker about, and I want to go and find that? So if you guys are thinking about Ability Pen on your Revenants, what is? Let's delve a little bit deeper into exactly what it's about. Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Paragon Guide. I am Sylphin. So we are taking a look into damage versus ability pen on Revenant more in depth. So I've added on his Scar and his Hellfire rounds to kind of take a look at just power, just ability pen. What does it do on these abilities as well? So for Obliterate, if you take a look at varying levels of damage and ability pen, we can see that it gains extra damage on either 0 for 100% crit build, which is at this level of power and ability pen, to 22 extra damage on an Obliterate with a 48% crit build here. With this, all of these include Lifesteal and a Blink Shot, and 56 extra damage on an Obliterate for an all power build. 53 total CP into power or penetration. You can see that gets the highest bonus here at 56. So anywhere from a 0 to 8.5% increase on the Obliterate. Ability pen looks like it can only do a maximum effect here of 56 at this level of power. I'm sure obviously if you went a little bit higher it would affect that even more. So but that's on average on your average build here with Revenant. Now the Scar ability, when you do the same thing, it actually really does like ability penetration, just because of that really poor power scaling. It can get a benefit at 100% crit build for 24 extra damage, all the way up to only 30 for an all power build. So looks like that 15 to 20% increase in the Scar's damage really doesn't add up to be very much. 24 to 30 extra damage. Now what about his Hellfire, that empowered fourth shot? When you put this in here at 100% crit build, it actually hurts. Going into ability pen actually hurts Hellfire with -6 less damage than it otherwise would have done, all the way up to 14 extra damage at the high. So looks like Hellfire, not the power scaling is kind of really right along that mark where ability pen and power seem to be almost at the same, with obviously power being a little bit stronger here than otherwise. So very interesting that Scar kind of likes it. Doesn't really add up to be very much of a difference, while Obliterate, again, a little bit of an extra difference. So that is the effect of ability pen on his abilities. Honestly, not much of a change. 56 extra damage on an Obliterate, 30 extra damage on a Scar, 14 extra damage on a Hellfire, and that's when you're going all power. I don't know. Please remember that yes, your Obliterate is still doing 623 damage, but that's more so because of the power, not necessarily because of the penetration. So please keep in mind, yes, this is still a very hurtful Obliterate, but the increase that it does, 53 damage, you will see that that's not very much in just a moment. So that is the effect of ability pen on these abilities. You can see not very much in the math department. Now, if we want to also consider that taking CP away from power and putting into ability pen, it's also going to affect his basic attack. His basic attack will be weaker because it's not getting 0.8 of all that power that you're taking away to put into ability pen. So if we go and take into account that fact, you'll see something very interesting. So these numbers here include the power going into his basic attack, plus Hellfire rounds, plus his Scar. So the only thing that this does not include is his Obliterate. So his Obliterate I have put up here for extra damage for extra damage here, because we're trying to see the change between going into power or pen, we can see that 100% crit build gets 0. It doesn't benefit from the Obliterate on 100% crit build doesn't benefit at all to the Obliterate getting only 56 extra damage on an all power build. So let's take a look at the DPS numbers for his basic attack plus his Hellfire rounds plus his Scar. So the only thing we have to consider on top of this is his Obliterate. Now for 100% crit build, 400 DPS here after armor for this build. Now if we put into ability pen, what is the DPS now? 256. That is dealing only 64% the DPS that it otherwise would have in a 100% crit build. So you are taking a DPS hit of 36% DPS decrease to gain 0 damage on your Obliterate. Do you see? Because this includes Mark and Scar, and it includes Hellfire rounds. You are taking a 36% DPS decrease for nothing, for literally 0 on your Obliterate. Remember, if we go back here, there's no difference in the damage that his Obliterate does if you go into ability pen. So if if you're taking all of his abilities into account, you're taking a DPS hit because that ability pen doesn't affect his basic attack, right? This also does have crit. Obviously, 100% crit. I've included that crit in these two numbers here so that it's realistic. Because remember, you're taking your ability pen is not going to crit. It's not going to get 2.5 times its value. So that is a consideration as well. Now, what about 48% crit chance? It's dealing a little bit less DPS. Simply because I have taken into account the fact that I've had to average out that crit effect, and have to go all the way over here to if you put if you had 100% crit chance, 48% crit chance, my god, and went all into ability pen at that amount of crit, you can see it's 100 DPS decrease, or you're dealing 25% less DPS to gain 22 extra damage on your Obliterate. Remember, this includes his Hellfire rounds and it includes his Scar. So you are losing 100 DPS to gain 22 extra damage on your Obliterate when you use it. In an all-power build, 350 DPS to 299. 51 less DPS or 15%. So you are losing 51 DPS to gain 56 damage on your Obliterate when you use it. As you can see here, I think that this kind of proves the fact that ability pen is simply not appropriate at final builds. At final builds, it is simply not worth it. The DPS decrease, because it is not informing your basic attack, is just too great. As you can see, I mean, you're losing what, 150 DPS to gain nothing on a 100% crit build. You are losing, So, anyways, I'm sure you get the point. Per CP the DPS decrease per CP spent into ability pen is 1.2 for the 100% crit. So every time you add a CP of ability pen and not into power on 100% crit build, you are losing 1.2 DPS. So it's really interesting here. Ability pen looks like it's really not great for him whatsoever at final builds. Now, what about the other question? What about in the early game? If you don't want to go into Adamant Edge with some health, if you want every single CP that you get in the early game to go into damage, what do you go into? Attack speed, crit, basic pen, or ability pen. The simple fact of the matter, the simple answer is ability pen. Because ability pen also works on his Obliterate here, you can see that it is less than a 1% decrease in the damage of his Obliterate. And when you go into here to look at the rest of his, you know, his basic attack, his Scar and his Hellfire rounds, this here is a 5, which is a little bit more than 5%, so about 5.5, 6% here, and then you kind of take away that 1% from the Obliterate, so about 5%. Or you can go over here and take a look at basic pen and see that this is only a 3% decrease. The thing about the basic pen though, it doesn't help your Obliterate. So what I would personally recommend is are meltdowns in the early game, just so that you can secure those kills, snowball, which is the point of Revenant, in really making sure that your Scar into your Obliterate in the early game does as much damage as possible. Your basic attacks, again, yes, this does include having low amounts of CP, low amounts of power and stuff. While this does include it just, I would much rather make sure that my Obliterate and my Scar in the early game are doing lots of damage to, again, secure those kills and snowball and be what Revenant is. And that's kind of his point. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this. What do you think about the effects of Ability Pen at full builds? You know, and you can see that as soon as you start getting, you know, into the 30-40 CP mark, Ability Pen, you know, that you kind of are forced to go into in the early game, really starts to drop off. Tell me what you think about that. Does this help you anymore kind of understand how Ability Pen works with Revenant? Please, ladies and gentlemen, like this video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, share it to the community, and of course, guys, subscribe. If you guys like this content, found it useful, please subscribe so I can do it for you in the future. Till next time, like always, stay optimistic and positive.